views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, good evening. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to journalists, reporters, editors, writers, sometimes filmmakers, sometimes artists, sometimes photographers, anybody who puts stuff out in the Bronx. In our second segment this evening, we're going to talk about a very interesting art program exhibit that's going to be at one of the libraries in the Bronx. And right now, though, we're going to get started with our buddy Claudia Aponte from The City. Nice to have you with us once again, Claudia.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Claudia, you wrote an article which I thought was fascinating. We've been back and forth down the block and around the corner on this for a very long time. And that is the notion that the city wants to cancel the contract for Trump Enterprises to operate the Ferry Point golf course. And I say that with a deep breath because we've been canceled, not canceled, back and forth on this. Where are we at right now?
Right. So right now, it's still unclear exactly who's going to be in charge of the golf course once the contract with the Trump organization. First of all, if it is effectively canceled, it's under litigation right now. So earlier this year, after the January 6th insurrection on the Capitol, Mayor de Blasio moved to cancel its contracts with the Trump organization. That meant the ice skating rinks in Central Park, the Central Park Carousel, and the Trump Ferry Points Link golf course in the Bronx, Throgs Neck, overlooking the Whitestone Bridge. And then last Monday, the city posted a notice, the Parks Department quietly posted a notice announcing that it had awarded a no-bid contract to an LLC, without really any sort of name recognition. Its name was Ferry Points Links LLC. Turns out that LLC was affiliated with Core Services Group, and one of the largest homeless shelter contractors in the city, to operate the golf course. It's unclear why the city awarded the contract to this company, but as it turns out, this company has a spotty record of managing homeless shelters even, and no record of operating golf courses in the city. And after we first reported on the deal, they dropped out of the project. They were also the subject of a investigation in the New York Times over the weekend, a pretty devastating investigation for the company, detailing a lot of backdealing by its chief executive, Jack Brown III, who earned nearly $1 million as a nonprofit homeless shelter operator.
What a mess. Can we say what a mess at this point? There's so much in there. First of all, I'm unfamiliar off the top of my head with the legal proceedings. How can the city, for something like that, just offer a no bid contract? They can just decide. And then, of course, we'd like to certainly trace back how we got to this organization, why they are getting, the contract for this very high profile recreation facility. I'm asking you. I don't get it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It's definitely something that we are trying to figure out ourselves. The mayor himself does not know. Today in his daily press conference, he said that he doesn't know why Core Services Group was
He doesn't know?
No, he said that he doesn't know why Core Services Group was awarded the contract in the first place. Just to be clear, that they do not have the contract anymore.
My jaw is dropped deliberately. He doesn't know?
Yeah. It's been a whirlwind trying to catch up with the ins and outs of this story, but they do not have the contract at the moment. There's a firm, an Atlanta-based firm called Bobby Jones Links. They are a golf course operator based out of Georgia, and they now will be handling the concession, but it still begs the question, why is the city awarding no bid contracts to either of these companies?
To anybody?
Core Services Group. What exactly is going on?
So, it's mind-blowing, really. If you take a step back, you've got this situation. It's highly politicized, obviously, no matter how you deny it. It's even a legal question. The justification that the mayor put out was that there was criminal activity in Donald Trump's involvement with the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. Now, many people believe that Trump, is guilty of that, but that has not been proven by any court of law. That's an assumption that the mayor has made as justification for removal of the contract. So if you're going to do that, let's just say, okay, you've decided, you've talked to your lawyers, you've decided you're on good legal ground. Wouldn't you make sure that when you open this high profile property up, that you're going to do it absolutely above board, that the city is going to do it right? We're not going to get into anything that's questionable. And then to have it be in this situation where there's no bid contracts. No bid contracts is a red flag in New York City, no matter what the contract is.
Totally. And what
I'm asking a rhetorical question, I guess.
And just to be clear, the argument that the de Blasio administration made in its decision to end its contracts with the Trump organization was that in the case of the golf course specifically, that the affiliation with the Trump brand, and everything, and the fallout of the insurrection would mean that the name of the golf course bearing the Trump name would be tarnished, and thus, decreasing the chances of a major tournament coming to the golf course, and, affecting business in the city. That is kind of like the reason on paper in the legal filings, because of course the Trump organization's legal team challenged and is challenging the city's decision in court at the moment. The Trump organization is arguing that, first of all, it's not in our contract whether or not that we are required to bring tournaments of this caliber to the Bronx, but also they are arguing that we have brought PGA level tournaments in the past. These are their arguments in court. It's messy, and we still don't know where this is gonna.
And again, if you're going to do that, if that's the decision you make, you got to do it completely above board, because then they're going to say you threw us out, but look at what you're doing. You're just, well, whatever. So we don't know. And the next step is what is a court hearing, or somebody to slap the mayor and say, wake up? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen here.
So there's going to be a public hearing on the actual contract award for the golf course on October 12th. It's a virtual hearing. I wish I could share the information on where to stream it right now, but I just don't have it on the top of my head. It's available on the city record posted this morning. So there will be a hearing on October 12th about the contract and about the project in general. In terms of the lawsuit between the Trump organization and the city, there are no hearings set yet, but they're constantly, litigating this in the court and uploading documents.
Well, guess what? For better or for worse, you are going to be our guru, and as the thing develops, we'll call you back and bring you in and try and sort this out one way or the other. The other thing that you recently wrote about that I do want to talk about, because obviously this so-called second go-round with a COVID, slightly different, maybe largely different from the original, but a story you wrote was certainly troubling, saying that Dr. Trainees said that there were, the word you used in the headline was grueling pandemic work conditions in public hospitals. Who was it that said it, and what did they find?
For sure. So the city council several weeks ago held an oversight hearing to listen to residents and interns who work at New York City public hospitals, just to hear more details about the working conditions that they have endured during the pandemic and just as part of their medical training. This was a result, unfortunately, of a spate of suicides among medical residents at Lincoln Hospital in the South Bronx. There was an 8-month period starting late last year up until February of this year, where 3 residents died, 2 of them by suicide. It's unclear where exactly they died, but they were working at the hospital at the time of their death. And I spoke with several colleagues of these young doctors, and they mentioned that they're very tight-knit group. They work backbreaking hours together. So they obviously grow pretty close. And they mentioned that in the case of one of the doctors who died, that he had been struggling with his mental health, that they had been working very grueling hours, that they were picked on. And, the image that really came out of the situation at Lincoln is something that was reflected in the oversight hearing from residents and interns who work at other New York City public hospitals.
I mean, I'm completely sympathetic to a health professional who has other mental issues and other considerations, and certainly sympathetic to all of them, and with tremendous respect for even working. Were there conditions in the hospital either not protecting a personnel appropriately in with this very contagious disease, and other issues, cleanliness or understaffing or other things that potentially could drive somebody to even take their own life?
Yeah, we may never know exactly why these young doctors, died by suicide. But one picture that does emerge from the testimony of the residents and interns who testified before the city council last month is that certainly understaffing, a general just like grueling and very competitive culture within the hospital,
Really?
a lack of resources does, affect their mental health and affects their ability to complete the job. I've heard from residents and interns at Lincoln and elsewhere who complete a lot of out of title work. That's work outside of their job description, like literally, that they're in charge of completing phlebotomy tasks, changing sheets, transferring patients in and out of wards, tasks, that usually
Tasks that maybe somebody else ought to be doing.
Right.
Before we let you go, when you say competitive, what do you mean competitive? People trying to get the better jobs, or I'm not quite sure what you meant by competitive. When you say, well, there was competition between people.
Totally. Definitely, again, a picture that emerged in Lincoln and in other hospitals is a culture of fear and retaliation in general, just like competitiveness. Yeah, retaliation from attendings and other people above who, a general feel of fear of talking about mental health issues in general, a culture of what residents perceive as favoritism and like, so and so doesn't treat me as fairly as this other person because they just don't like me. They have told me that they don't like me.
And also that feeds into a lack of support if I mean, we think of, for example, police officers who work under some incredible conditions and have to deal with horrible things. And certainly in the hospital in this day and age more than ever. Anyway, Claudia Aponte from the city, thank you so much for joining us. Your work is great. We need you, and we're going to have you back. Not only as this story develops, but as the Trump golf course story develops as well, and anything else that you're working on.
Totally. Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to go to the Huntington Free Library for some artwork. Don't go away.